So hey guys, welcome to Why You Should Read The Great Alone, by a book by Kristen Hanna. This is a pitch by Alexandra, Sierra, Mauricio, Athena, Edith, myself, Jessica, Patricia, and Andrea.
Hi class, my name is Mauricio Garcia. I'm going to talk about the background of the book, the setting of the story, and a brief summary of the book. The Great Alone by Christine Hanna is a fictional novel. It is under the genre of historical fiction and domestic fiction. This book was nominated for the Audie Award for fiction. And this book also won a award called the Goodreads Choice Awards, Best Historical Fiction. This award is pretty difficult to win. The Goodreads website has over 90 million members, and on the Goodreads website, people could read books, leave reviews, read quotes, and see annotations. So the Great Alone is narrated in a third-person point of view. The story is mostly told from Lenny's perspective. She is the main character in the story. The next slide. Thank you. So the setting, the story takes place around the year 1975 during the Vietnam War. Lenny and her family moved to Connect in Alaska. Connect is a small town that is said to be next to Homer, Alaska. The family of three, Lenny, Cora, and Ernst. Lenny is a 13-year-old girl. Lenny's mother is Cora, and Lenny's father is Ernst. Alaska is a very beautiful place, but it has many dangers. Not just because of the wild animals, but because of the weather and the people living there. The weather in Alaska can drop as low as negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit. The people in Alaska can also be very violent. According to alarms.org, Alaska's violent crime rate is 8.85 per 1,000, and this is the highest in the nation, while the property crime rate is second only to New Mexico. As the story progresses, Lenny and her family realize that Alaska is very dangerous, and they really need to adapt quickly to this new environment. The family eventually figures out that they need to prepare for the famous winter. In the story, they go through Alaskan winter, and the winter in Alaska starts around October and ends around March. Winter there is almost 6 months long. Next slide. Thank you. So Lenny's father, he served in the Vietnam War, and he was captured and became a POW. A POW stands for prisoner of war. The story says that after going to Vietnam, Ernst changed greatly. And I did a little bit more research, and it said, according to Britannica.com, the treatment of POWs in Vietnam was terrible. Soldiers that were captured were tortured, isolated, and psychologically abused daily. After the war, Ernst developed many mental problems, and Ernst developed PTSD. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. And in the story, Ernst has a lot of trouble sleeping and has many angry outbursts throughout the entire story. These are some effects of PTSD. But before going to Vietnam, Cora got pregnant with Lenny at age 16. during this time period, it was seen as something very shameful to be a young mother. Cora's parents really disliked Ernst. Still, Cora had to stay with their parents until Ernst came back from Vietnam. When Ernst came back from Vietnam, Cora ran away with him and Lenny. They have been on the move until in the beginning of the story, they get a letter from a friend of Ernst that was in the war. Ernst's friend had died in Vietnam. They were really good friends. So before his friend died, he gave Ernst a worn down house in Alaska. Um, Lenny's family saw that this was a good chance to start fresh, and however, as the story progresses, things take a turn for the worst, and for Ernst's mental health, and it rapidly deteriorates. So in this presentation, we are going to focus more on character development. That's it for my.
Hello, my name is Andrea Rodriguez, and now I will be presenting Lenora's character, or as we know her in the book, Lenny. As previously said, this is a book based on historical fiction that is seen through third person point of view. Although the book in itself is an eye catcher, it might not be suited to a younger audience. It's a very interesting read from start to finish, but it does include graphic scenes and depictions of violence, in addition to the domestic abuse the main character and mother face. It, of course, takes place in a historical setting, where we get to see how trauma can affect a person and to those around them. Not only does it deal with these very heavy topics, but it greatly expands on the feeling of isolation that contribute to what our main character, Lenny, feels. As she also puts it, someone said to me once that Alaska didn't create character, it revealed it. Next slide, please. Moving on from that, we see Lenny, who starts off as 13, then following a timeline until we see her begin her own relationship with Matthew, another character we could see influence her life greatly. The relationships, such as her father Ernst and her mother Cora, are those whom she holds close and dear, although even for the abuse she suffers because of it. In addition, the trials and tribulations that face Lenny are no small matter, as she finds herself trying to accomplish her dreams to go into college. Her financial struggles, as we all can relate to, hold her back, as well as the fact that she is a woman at the time trying to get education. And when you read the book, it comes off greatly for the audience to decide whether the decisions she took towards the end were the most moral thing to do for someone in her shoes. Lenny's character is by far, in my opinion, the most interesting one we get to see develop, not just because of her perspective, but also for the development she shows. As certain dynamics once later in the book, you can also witness how her opinions begin to shape. As friendships become testy, just as the Alaska's winter cold, she faces danger not only from those close to her, but as well to her own mind. This setting that the book takes place in is not to take with faint of heart.
So, another great reason to be reading The Great Alone is not only the development of the main character and her struggles throughout her new life in Alaska, but also the many supporting characters within the book that all just kind of have their own little individual stories that you can grow attached to. One of which being Cora, which is Lenny's mother. She is a woman that is willing to do anything for the one she loves. A little bit of background of Cora. She eloped as a teenager to keep Lenny. She eloped with Ern. She was pregnant at 16, and the parents wanted to send her to boarding school and to have her give the child away to one of the nuns at church. Cora didn't want that. She wanted to keep her child, and so she was willing to leave her parents, leave the comfort of her home, and to run away with Ern and to just live like a life traveling across city to city, hoping that they could have like a better life. Um, Not only that, but Cora also just clings on to the hope that Ernst's PTSD will someday be cured, that he'll somehow be better. As Mauricio said, Ernst had a lot of nightmares that caused him to, just suddenly wake up through the night. He'll like just kind of go through a rampage through the house, screaming, yelling, just like accusing people of wanting to hurt him, wanting to follow him, stuff like that. And it also led to other like violent outbursts. Um, and she endured all of it for just like the sake of love. She loved Ernst and she believed in him. Um, and throughout the book, there's a lot of character development with Cora as she becomes stronger. In Alaska, there tends to be a lot of uh, it's not like a city. You have to do your own hunting, drawing your own water and everything like that. And for Cora, that just means she has to become stronger as an individual. She can't really rely on she can't really rely on other people. Like neighbors help each other and whatnot when they're like, hey, I need some chickens. Do you think you can lend me some chickens and I'll barter something else with you? But that she has to become stronger because the wilderness out there is just so harsh. Anyway, that's just another great reason to read the book.
Let me unmute myself. I just realized I was talking. Okay. So I have Ernst. That's my character. And he's the husband of Cora and father of Lenny. So first off, I'd like to start by saying that this book can be, a little difficult to read, but in the end, you'll see how, the author Kristen Hanna sets the tone for Ernst, which is, like I just said, the husband of Cora, the father of Lenny. So this initially happens in the 70s, where he starts off by losing his job. He comes back from the Vietnam War, all to get a letter in the mail from the father of his former friend, which is a fellow soldier of his, that he left him 40 acres of land in Alaska, which he would like Ernst to have. So, I think Ernst in the end, he has good intentions for thinking that this could be good for him and his family. Although I would definitely acknowledge the fact that this decision was more based on how it would benefit Ernst the most, because his family moved over there for his well-being instead of their own. And I feel that this family, or that in this family, they tend to put Ernst before their daughter and Cora, which you will later see in the story. For me, it's hard to judge Ernst in the beginning, unfortunately, because Ernst being a prisoner of war, coming home and it affected him in many ways, where any cold weather would basically just set him off. So the effects of POW, which stands for prisoner of war, which has many follow-up studies concluding, psychiatric illnesses and schizophrenic disorders, anxiety reactions, alcoholism, nervousness, and other psychoneurotic reactions. So you can imagine, Ert coming back to his family and seeing how he's changed so much and how it affected him. Not only did this trauma affect Ernst himself, but also his family. And later when they move to Alaska and, they start talking to people and they start getting to know them, the town gets to know Ernst and they realize who he is and how he mistreats everyone around him. Being in this position, as a character would most likely be the most disliked in the story. However, I think it's important to remember that even though it's hard, he's a victim of POW, and it doesn't justify his actions, because in the end, like, he's still, like, in the story, at least, he's a real character. Like, he's a real person who's dealt with many difficult situations. And towards the end of reading the story, I was kind of asking myself this question, like, Ernst in the beginning has good intentions for moving his family to Alaska, but is that enough? Like, is it enough for Cora to stay and fight for her family, or is it just enough for her to leave and say, I'm done? And I think as a wife and a mother, I would be torn having to choose between them two. But overall, I think Ernst, was looked at as, oh my God, like this father figure who, like every father, has their own situations or whatever they're dealing with, on the inside, but definitely doesn't justify his actions, like I said in the story. That's all.
Hi, I'll be talking about my character, Matthew. Matthew is the son of one of the oldest homesteading family, but not just that, he is also Lenny's first best friend. And they're really close in this story, but not just that, both of them have the same experience, like how Lenny parents are abused, each other, and Matthew was seeing his parents having divorce. Both of them have in common. Matthew saw his own mom, drown in the water, and he decided to move away from Alaska, to have a better life, to live with his aunt. A few years later, he came back to Alaska, and he rekindled his friendship with Lenny. But in the story, later on, they both of them have a romantic tension between them. But as Lenny's dad found out about what's happening between them, he got really mad. So both of them escaped. And when they escaped, bad thing happened, and Matthew got hurt from the mountain incident. So he got in a coma for a while, but he was still in a weak state. And then he come back to see him, and they got married and have kids together. But Matthew is a kind, smart, and gentle person who went through trauma in his childhood years. And that's what in this book really about him. Yeah, that's it.
Hi guys, my name is Patricia, and today I'm going to talk about one specific character from The Great Alone. To begin with, there are many reasons to read this beautiful book. One of those reasons are the characters. We know the characters are one of the most important elements to make a story interesting for readers. Also, the characters are essential to catch the reader's attention. So let me introduce this amazing character, better known by the people in Canet as Large March. Although she's not the major character or the protagonist of this story. I think she has a lot of relevance in this story, and I will tell you why. At first glance, I will describe this character, Lord March, as a big black woman with a good sense of humor. She's very, very brave, and she likes to help others with nothing in exchange. Large March shows up in this story since chapter 3, and she became very important to the rest of the story because she was the first person who welcomes the main characters to connect in Alaska. Furthermore, she has a very close relationship with all the local people in this place because she owned the main store of food supply and provisions where people come to stock up and make deals. And she was very friendly with all the people in Canet. The most important thing that I would like to emphasize, according to the elements of fiction that we are using in this course, is that this is a minor static character. We already know the static characters are mainly identified by maintaining the same personality from the beginning to the end of the story, and therefore they are tedious character or boring. But in this case, Large March plays an important role because she's in the development of the plot and the resolution of the conflict in this story. And sometimes minor characters do not have any participation in the most important moments in the story. But Large March got involved in this plot because the things that she had lived in her past are very related to the conflict between Ern, Cora, and of course Lenny. So that's why she's very close to these things. And I can not reveal many specific details from this beautiful book, but I do guarantee that this book ain't is a waste of time. So it worth to read it. To be honest, when I got the book, I said, how many hours is it going to take to take me to read this book, because this is a big book, as you can see. And after reading the first 5 chapters, I just hook up with the plot of this book. And finally, I encourage you to read this book and get involved and connect to the common human experiences that exist in real life, not only in fiction, like in this book. And also, I read about this book. They are preparing like a movie, I think, for this book. And of course, once it releases, I I think I will watch it. And that's it. Thank you.
Have to unmute myself. Hello, my name is Sierra Rada, and not only is there so many good connections with the characters in this book, but there is also so many good connections that readers can relate to with the different symbols and motives in this book. So a motive or a symbolism in the book that readers can relate to is therapy letters. So throughout the book, Lenny and Matthew continue sending letters back and forth. This is the way that they're maintaining their relationship, but it's also a way that Lenny is just kind of calming herself down and writing her thoughts out as a form of therapy. This is something that a lot of people today use. A lot of the readers do the same method of writing in a diary or writing a letter to get their feelings out as a form of therapy. So as readers, we can really connect to this and understand that we know what she's going through, Lenny is. And she was writing these letters even if Matthew couldn't even read them, because it wasn't just for their relationship to stay connected, but it was mainly for her to be able to get her feelings out and express what she was going through at home with her dad, and but with their community. She was able to express everything and get it onto paper. Another symbolism and motive would be advice on mistakes. Large Marge tried to give some advice to Cora, and her advice was that you can only make one mistake before the second one kills you. And so this one might be a harder piece of advice for readers to relate to, because not most of the time that second mistake we make won't be like the death of us, but it will lead to bigger consequences. So this is something that as readers we can take out of this book and kind of apply it to our own lives, is that we might be lucky the first time we make a mistake, but if we make that same mistake again, it might not be the death of us, but it will lead to huge consequences that we may not have had the first time we did that. So Cora took this advice and was able to use it to her own life. And so I think that's something that as readers we can take and use for our own. Another one is that today in relationships, it's not always going to be a happily ever after. And so Lenny and Matthew had a lot of obstacles on their own to go through their relationship. And there was a lot of times where it didn't seem like they were going to be able to last. And I think as readers in our own relationships and lives, we might have those same problems where it's hard for us to picture a happily ever after at the end of a relationship because of different obstacles we go through. So this is just like another amazing reason why people should read this book, because we can now kind of picture ourselves in this life, even though it's a whole different time period and the struggles might be completely different than what we would struggle with. It's something that readers can kind of like imagine themselves in and kind of like give them a more like fairy tale look of things. Because throughout the book, like I said, we see how Lenny and Matthew go through their obstacles. But in the end of the book, we see that Lenny and Matthew do end up together. So they were able to, go through those obstacles and still have their happily ever after. And so, like I said, that's something that as readers, we can read that and be like, hey, we might have these obstacles right now, but by the end, we just have to push through it. And if the love is strong enough, we can make it through. So yeah, this book has a lot of really great connections that readers can make with their own lives. So reading this book, it's not just like you're reading a story. You can read it and really put yourself in those positions, and you can read it and take that advice or strategies and put them into your own life, even though it's a totally different way things are done, but you could use that advice and different things you see in the book in your own life. So yeah, The Great Alone is a great book. It's by Kristen Hanna, and there's lots of adventure, drama, and love, and you can pick it up at any store. And we really recommend that you read this book because there is so much to learn, and it's like a whole adventure that you're reading in this book. So go check it out.